Hi, and welcome to the next tutorial on this channel. Today we will make an animated CashBox together, which you can use for your tycoon game or whatever. With this tutorial, you will be able to make a stunning CashBox design with visuals and animations to grab more attention from the players. So for the first step, you will need a model for the CashBox. You can literally use anything you like for that, if it is from Sketchfab or if you do your own. It doesn't even have to be a box, it could be a chair if you like. Also, if you want, you can get all the assets, effects, and everything from this tutorial on my website, www.ments.com. For this tutorial, I use Blender to create a simple but clean looking CashBox with some depth in it, and also a hole on the top for some nice visuals later. If you want to use Blender as well to create your model, I will quickly show you how you can create a model similar to mine because it is quite simple. Open Blender, and in this case you could actually use the default cube already placed, but I'm stupid and deleted the cube just to add a cube 1 second later. Now switch into edit mode by pressing tab. Then we will select 4 of the vertices by holding shift to select more than one. Then we delete only the face like Haas. When selected the vertices again, press E for extrude and then press S for scale. That way we can make a small edge. Make sure you use the same scale values for all axes, like for example 0.85, then press E for extrude again, and then Z to move along the Z axis. Pick a depth for the small edge we are building, like minus 0.1. And the last step is to add the face of this plane again by pressing F for face. Now you just need to do this for all sides to create the box feeling. To make a dollar symbol on the box, add a text in object mode and write the dollar sign in edit mode. In the data settings, you can extrude the text in its height. To position the dollar better, move the origin of it to the center of mass. If you press N, you see the position and so on of your object, and there you can position it like you want. Make sure to turn your text into a mesh by right-clicking it and selecting Convert to Mesh. Add materials for everything you want, and then assign the according faces to the material it should be. We change the color and so on in UEFN, just make sure everything in the same color has the same material here in Blender. Now that we have our CashBox model, let's start in UEFN. First, for organization, make a mesh, material, textures, blueprints, and Niagara folder so everything will be nicely organized. Import your model into the mesh folder and name it something like SM_CashBox. Then we create a blueprint with our static mesh where we later also add the Niagara effects, add a new building prop blueprint and name it, for example, BP_CashBox. Add a new static mesh and also name it CashBox. There on the right, add your imported mesh. Now let's start by making some materials for our box. Add a new material. I named it M_green since I want a green color at the edge of the box. Open it up and add a constant 3 vector. Yeah, there we change the color to green. Then we want it to look a bit metallic and shiny, so change the metallic to 0.5 and specular and roughness to 0. In the blueprint, we can now add this green to our edge material and use the default white emissive for the inner box material. Now let's start making the glowing effect for the hole in the CashBox. Add a new Niagara system in your folder and name it NS_glow and use a fountain as base emitter. Now, under emitter update, change the spawn rate to something much higher like 500. Under particle spawn in initialize particle, set the mine lifetime to 0.6 and the max lifetime to 1.7. Then change the color to a glowing green, so with a value above 1 like 5 for example. Now set the sprite size MN to 0.5 and the max to 1. Then in shape location, change it to a cylinder and turn the height to 0. So we get a disk and the radius to 25. Change the velocity to linear and then delete the gravity force in the particle update. Now that we have some particles, we want to add the glowing cylinder. And for that we need another quick mesh we do really quick in Blender as well. In Blender, add a circle and increase the vertices so it is smoother. Then in edit mode, select all with A and extrude with E to the Z axis with Z. That's literally all for the mesh. But before we save and close, click this small arrow and check face orientation. Then you see what faces are inside and what are outside. Make sure the outside of the tube is blue, and if not, select all and press Shift+N to change the direction. Also, one more step is to make sure the UVs are aligned so we have it easier with the material. Select all with A and go into UV editing, then press 1 on your number board to change the direction to the front view. Under UV, use the project from view option, then on the left your UVs appear. Now scale and position them so it fits the square better. This doesn't have to be perfect, just make sure it is not too small. Now save and close, back in UEFN again, import the new mesh and name it, for example, SM_tube. Now before we add it to our Niagara effect, we create a material which makes the tube go transparent the further away it gets from its origin to get this glowing circle effect. Add a new material in your material folder and name it M_glow. When opened, first change the blend mode to translucent since we want to change the opacity, and also the shading model to unlit. Also search for Niagara and set all flags to true. Then again, add a constant vector 3 and make it a glowing green with value 5 and plug it into the emissive color. Now for the opacity part, we want the top to be more translucent than the bottom. So we first get the texture coordinate node and then use a mask node where we select the green values to mask. And as you can see, we get this black and white vertical shade. To make the transition better, we use a power node with an exponent of 4. Plug this into opacity and now we have this green effect which fades out to the top. Go back to our Niagara system and add a minimal emitter. In emitter state, set the lifecycle mode to self and the loop behavior to once. Add a spawn burst and set it to 1 so we will get only one particle that never loops and so it stays forever. Under particle update in particle state, we only need to uncheck the kill particles after lifetime option. Now we spawn one particle and it stays forever. You can scale the tube like you need in initialize particle and non-uniform mesh scale. Now since we don't want a particle to spawn but our new glow mesh, we delete the sprite render at the bottom and add a mesh render instead. There select our created tube mesh, then select enable material overrides and add a new override material where you select the just created glow material. As you can see, we now have this nice circle glow with the particles. Our next mission is to add some star particles so the effect looks more interesting. Let's add a new material and name it M_star. Open it up and first change the blend mode to translucent and the shading model to unlit. Then again, add a texture node and subtract from it so we get this square pattern. To make the fade, take the absolute of it and then the power. Recall, for the exponent of the power, add a radial gradient exponential and set its radius to a constant like 0.9. Now, if we mask out both the R value and G value of the power, we get these horizontal and vertical fade lines, which we then add together in a multiply node. Now we have a star-like shape, but we need to spike the edges and invert it so everything black gets white and everything white gets black. So add a 1- node and again a power node with a high exponent like 180. As you can see, we now have a nice star mask. Now add a particle color node so we can control the color of the star in the Niagara system later. Plug its RGB value into the emissive color and take the alpha and multiply it with our star mask, then plug this into the opacity. Perfect, now we have our stars. Let's add them also in the Niagara system. Back again in Niagara, add a new emitter and use the fountain one. Set the spawn rate to something lower like 5 and the lifetime mine to 1.5 as well as the max to 2.5. For the color, since we have the particle color in the material, we can change it here and pick a glowing yellow like 10, 10, 2. Then in the shape location, pick a cylinder and scale its height to 0 and the radius to the same as your effect, in my case 25. In velocity, use a linear force and add force to the z-axis, for example 50. Delete the gravity force since we don't need them to fall down. Now we only add a curl noise force. Now we only need to change the particles material to our star material. Again, make sure in all materials you use for Niagara, the flags for Niagara are selected, or you get an error when you add it. Perfect. Now, we have a nice effect. The last thing we want to add to this effect is a glowing circle at the bottom, so it feels like the effect comes from the inside of the CashBox. For that, just duplicate the emitter with the tube mesh and change the mesh to a cylinder, and again, add an override material. Let's really quick make this material, name it, for example, M_glow bottom, and again, translucent, unlit, and all Niagara flags. Then put a constant 3 vector with a bright yellow, like 10, 10, 2, and plug it in emissive color, that's all. Back again in Niagara, add this material to the mesh and then scale the mesh in initialized particle with non-uniform, so it is like a disk at the bottom. In my case, 0.51, 0.51, and something almost 0. Finally, the Niagara is finished, so the next thing is to add this effect in our blueprint. Go back to our blueprint with the CashBox and add a Niagara particle system and name it Glow. Select your Niagara effect we just created and then increase the z-axis, or up, how it is called with the local system, so it fits the CashBox. For me, 100 is fine. If you want, you can add this blueprint to your world now. So the next step would be to create the visual progress around the box that indicates how often the box is hit and increase its level if the progress is full. For that, we need to create a new material. Make a material and name it M_progress. Set the material to masked and unlit. This material is a bit bigger, so let's start with the background. Add a constant vector 4 and turn it into a parameter and name it size. In the channel names, make a size X, size Y, corner radius, and sharpness. You can copy my values with 0.45, 0.45, 0.05, and -0.4. Add a generate round rectangle node and put the append size in its box dimensions and sharpness to sharpness and corner radius in corner radius. Sign the rectangle and then use a smooth step with 0.5 as values and save this all in a named reroute node as background mask. sort it with selecting all and press C for comment, then you can better organize it. Let's move on with the segments. Add a texture node and subtract it from 0.5. Then add a material function and use the breakout float 2 components or use 2 mask nodes. Plug those inside arctangent 2 fast. Then divide by a value like 6, then frac, and then multiply. Multiply by a constant, which again you turn into a parameter and name it segments. With that, we can control the amount of segments later. The output of multiply you frac and put it in a divide node as well as a direct connections from multiply to divide. The frac node and the segments parameter you also connect in a divide node. Now from the divide node up here, put this in a 1 minus node and into a min node as well as a direct connection from divide node to min node. Then the output of the min node, we step with another constant parameter node named segments width. This we save as a named reroute node segments mask. From this divide node, put it in an add node and then floor it and save it as a progress mask with again a named reroute node. The progress value we do later. Add a comment node again for organization. Now let's jump to the progress part. We will control the progress of this material with the scale of the object it is applied to. So we can later just control the scale of the object via verse. So get the object scale node and take the Z value and divide it by the same parameter we already created named segments, and this we save as progress reroute node. Get this reroute node in the segments part and plug it into this add node we created earlier. Now for the output part, get 2 constant 3 vectors and turn them into parameters, which will be the color of the progress and background. Plug them together in a lerp node and put the output into the emissive color of the material. Then get the progress, background, and segments mask and use 2 multiply nodes to multiply the progress with the background and the background with the segments. Then saturate both and plug the upper one into the alpha input of the lerp node and the other one into the opacity mask of the material. That's it for the material. Now let's create a blueprint where we put this material on a plane. Add a new blueprint and name it BP_progress and open it up. Add a static mesh and use a plane for it. Then click one time outside the static mesh so it closes, then click back on it, and the material selection should appear. Their select our just created progress material. Now we can add this blueprint as well to our world and size and rotate it so it fits our box like we want it. Now as you can see, if you change the value of the Z-axis or up, we can control how big the progress is. This we will later control with verse. So it increases per hit on the box. Now you got the box and the progress. At this point, you can add these billboards that will later show the level of the box, as well as the cache per second. Add 2 billboards and position them like you want. Also to get the text, like in my case, use center justification and robot text font as well as 5x resolution. Perfect. Now, the last visual part before coding is this small animated icon at the top that tells the player to hit the box with his pickaxe. To do that, you just need 2 different textures that then will constantly swap between each other. I created these 2 textures. You can do whatever you want. Now add a new material and name it something like M_pickaxe. Open it up and first change the blend mode to masked and the shading model to unlit. Then add the 2 textures you imported by just dragging them in. Now to make the textures change, we use a time node which constantly loops between 0 and 2 seconds. Select period and use value 2. Then we use if nodes to check if we use texture 1 or texture 2. Add an if node and put the time node output in the A channel. Leave the B channel to 1 so we compare the seconds float with 1. In the case the time is above or equal to 1, we use the RGB of texture 1, and if the value is lower than 1, we use the RGB value of the second texture. Now to make it glow, we just multiply by 2 and plug this into the emissive color. Now with the same thresholds, we add another if node and just use the alpha values of the textures and not the RGB values, and plug the F output into the material opacity mask. So the mask fits the textures currently visible as well. Perfect. The last thing we want to add is, so this animated icon will always face the player's camera. For that, just pause the video and copy these nodes. Like, the PI1 and the object pivot point nodes are material functions you can just select after adding a material function node. If you got this, plug the camera reroute node into world position offset. Now we only again need to put this material into a blueprint plane and add it to the world. Now we have the CashBox complete, but again, before we have a look at the code, we want to make a nice cash animation when we hit the box, so cash is raining a bit. For that, we yet need another texture, but a really simple one. I created this texture of cash only with the border, so I can control the border and inline color better, but you can literally use any cash texture, but make sure the dimensions are 2 to 1, so for example, 2048 by 1024 or something like that. Again, with that texture, create a material named m_cash and put your cash texture in it. Make sure you got a Niagara flagged material like before and a glow also, so it's visually more present. Now let's quickly make the Niagara effect so we get this raining effect when hitting the box. Add a new Niagara effect to the project and name it ns_cash. Then open it up and use the confetti burst as template. Okay, let's go through it from top to bottom. First, change the looping duration to 2 seconds, then use 300 particles instead. Make the lifetime from 0 to 2 seconds, so particles disappear from the beginning. Also in the mesh scale option, use non-uniform and pick values for X and Y that are also in the resolution 2 to 1 like your texture, and a scale you like for the cache itself. I picked 0.15 and 0.075. Next, delete the shape location and change the from point velocity to 200 till 600. And use an offset of -2 on the z-axis so the particles get pushed up. Then go down till the aerodynamic drag, change the minimum to 0.5 and the rotation strengths from 0.5 to 1. Last thing, delete the sprite render and add a mesh render. Again, use a plane and put your cache material on it. Now this effect is finished and will be put in a blueprint as well, so we can spawn and despawn it with verse easily without using Fortnite devices. Add another blueprint and name it BP_cache, and in there add a Niagara particle system and change the Niagara to the just created one. This blueprint you don't need to add to the world. We will spawn this manually from the verse device. Now let's jump to the code. Add a new verse file to your project, or write the code into your existing project's code to make it function with your whole map setup. Also, for this setup to make it more easily integratable into other projects, we will write the function into a CashBox class that you can add to your other classes and use accordingly. So I quickly go through the code and explain some parts, and you can copy the code if you like, or again, if you want to have all assets from this tutorial, check out my website, www.ments.com. Now first, create the CashBox class, and then we will add some editables we need for the CashBox. First, we need all the props we created, the box itself, the progress, the pickaxe, and the cash effect prop. Then we need our 2 billboard texts for the level and hit amount. Then we also need some hit detectors as triggers. I show you after the code how you should add them in the world. And for last, we can control the starting hit amount of the box. As the variables for the box, we want the progress per level, the level itself, and the level goal. Since in our material we created a 12-stepped progress, we set the goal to 12 for default. Then we have a start amount, a hit amount, and a logic variable if a hit is playing or not. To convert strings into messages for the billboards later, we have this small string to message function. Now we want to make a function that resets the box completely and hides everything as if it didn't exist. So we set all the variables to their default values and set the hit amount and start amount to our editable starting amount. Also, we hide all the props and texts and disable all the hit detectors. Now, we add a function which will load the box, so it will show all props, enable the detectors, and set the text to the current status, as well as starting to await hits on the box from the player with another suspend function. In this function, we just loop and await if someone triggers the hit triggers, and then if so, we make another function which handles the on hit. First of all, here you can add the hit amount as cash to your system. So the player gets the cash awarded, then we increase the progress of the box by 1. Now we need to update the progress prop and make the hit effect. Also, we need to check if the progress is equal to the goal. So we can set it back to 0 and increase the level by 1. If so, we also want to increase the hit amount by just adding the starting amount again to it. Last, we need to update the texts again. For the update text function, we just get the 2 texts and use the string to message function to display the level and hit amount. Now for the hit effect, we want to make a nice scale animation on the box, as well as spawning the Niagara effect we created. So we get all the transforms of the box and use 3 different moves to create a nice effect where the box scales down and jumps up a little bit. And for the effect, we just use a play VFX function where we spawn a blueprint with the Niagara effect in it at the box position. And then dispose the prop after a short sleep so the props never stack too much in the world. Now, our last function is to update the progress prop, which we do by, again, getting all the transforms of it and then move it to the same location and scale besides the Z scale, which is controlled by the progress of the box. And with that, our material will make the progress as we created before. Now, to show you the finished box, I just need to add an instance of the class in the creative device and let it initialize on begin and load after we trigger a start trigger. Back to the world, you need to add the triggers. Add 1 trigger device which will make the box appear, and then add 5 triggers around the box like that. So no matter from where the box is hit, it works, and so we don't need to check all the triggers. We just make it so the top trigger is triggered as well when one of the remaining 4 triggers is triggered. So when the top one is triggered, we have a scenario in our code no matter the side that is hit. Now add your creative device to the world and connect all editables accordingly. Then we are finished and we can test our CashBox. Now in-game, if I step on the trigger here, the box will appear, and now I can hit the box from everywhere I want, and we have the nice box animation with the raining cash and the progress updates as well. Also, when we hit it 12 times, the level increases and we get more cash now. Now that's it for this tutorial. I hope it helped you, and if you have any questions, make sure to write them down in the comments. Also, if you want to see future tutorials on this channel, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you very much. Let me know what tutorials you want to see next, and if I can do anything better in the tutorials. Till next time, and bye!